Hi, and welcome to a very special Mondays with Marlo. It's special because it's not even Monday, it's Thursday. So welcome to Thursdays with Marlo. We pushed in this extra special Mondays with Marlo because we got Jon Hamm, and he's in town, and why not? So this is a treat in the middle of the week, and we're so excited that he's here. You know, it's wonderful. We've got so many questions for you, and what's great is that everybody really is interested in Don Draper, but everybody loves you.
Well, that's nice.
So that's so neat.
Yeah.
So the questions are great, lots and lots of questions for you. And it's only 4 days till the premiere of Mad Men season 5. And boy, we've been waiting a while for this.
Been a while. Been off the air for quite some time.
Yeah.
17 months off the air, and it's the anticipation seems to be palpable.
What was great is one of the papers yesterday had, okay, where did we leave you? So that was wonderful because you had to kind of catch up.
Yeah, definitely. Especially if, and the good thing about it is that the long hiatus, if you want a positive reframe on it, is that it gave a lot of people a lot of time to catch up or new people to come to the show.
Yeah, that's right. Well, they're surely going to be new this year. So our questions come from the community, as you know, and so they're right there looking at us. And the first one is from Becky Flawn. She says, there's so much tension between the characters in Mad Men, and all the relationships are so intense. How do you let off some steam? Do you guys stay in character when the cameras are off? Or do you joke around and pull pranks? How do you loosen it up a little bit?
Well, the show is very intense, but we have a pretty loose attitude on set, and we're all pretty good friends, and that helps alleviate a lot of that tension, which is nice.
Yeah.
Because it's fun to go to work. So for a fairly heavy show, we have a fairly lighthearted set, and we also have a lot of kids on set too. So it's hard to keep a pretty.
Whose kids are? I mean, the cast kids.
The cast, yeah. Kieran and Jared are our two little. Well, they were our kids last year.
Right.
But our two little kids on the show. So it's a tricky balance to strike, but I think we handle it pretty well.
You pull pranks and stuff?
Yeah, we're not so much like George Clooney style pranksters, but we do have a lot of fun. We actually play a lot of games.
Uh-huh.
We have a sort of a communal area by the hair and makeup trailer that everybody kind of congregates at. And we play dominoes, we play cards, we play board games, all this stuff. So, because as you know, there's tons of downtime on a TV set, so it's fun to do.
That's a great idea. This is from Google Talk, ConnectCom. What do you think is the reason that we love Don Draper, even though he does so many things we don't like? It's really an interesting question because he's kind of a cad.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly. I think that's
but we like him.
I think that there's hope for redemption. Honestly, I think that's the thing that I think a lot of people are drawn to, and I think that in a lot of ways you can see that this is a damaged guy.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people they want to help, they want to fix, they want to work on that. On those character flaws, and I think flawed characters are interesting characters. Matt was the guy that writes our show was saying, like, if it's just a perfectly moral person doing perfectly moral things, that's a fairly boring story.
Right.
It's a guy crossing a bridge basically, and that's kind of boring. The real drama is what happens when the bridge is out.
Right.
So I think that's more of an interesting thing, and Don's bridge is definitely out.
Do you think he has some positive traits? Do we see positive?
I do. I think he's loyal to people that he likes, and I think he likes people that are true and honest and supports all of that stuff. I think, especially with his relationship with Peggy,
right?
He's hard on her, but I think he is justifiably honest with her,
right?
And I think that's served both of them well in their relationship.
This is from Valerie. So you grew up in St. Louis. What was your childhood like?
I had a tricky childhood in that I lost my parents very young. I lost my mother when I was 9 and my father when I was 20. So I had, and St. Louis is a relatively small town, but I had a lot of good friends around whose families sort of filled in, and that was pretty great. But I also had great teachers and great high school community that I thrived in, and in fact I went back after I graduated college. I went back to my old high school and taught.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it was my sort of version of I didn't have the money to donate a library, so I thought I would donate a year of my time, and Not that I donated it; they paid me. But
What did you teach?
I taught acting and public speaking and improv. It was a very, very progressive high school.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, we had a lot of elective stuff.
Did you have a stepmother or a mom figure?
No. I had a lot of sort of surrogate mothers that were my friends' moms. But my dad never remarried after my mom.
Were you the only child?
I was the only child of my father and mother. My father was married before my mother, and he had 2 daughters, so I had 2 half-sisters.
Did your mother die of an illness?
Yeah, she had cancer.
Oh my, at 9 years old.
Yeah, she was 35.
My God, that must have been so hard.
No good.
Were you popular in high school?
I was pretty popular in high school, I guess. But we had a very small high school class. I think my graduating class was like 95 people. So everybody knew everybody anyway. So everybody was kind of popular. And but I did a lot of stuff. Like I played football, I played baseball, I was in theater. You know, we were all encouraged to do a little bit of everything, and it was great. That's a fun way to go through.
Were you a heartthrob?
I don't know about that. I was a pretty. Boys, when they're 16, 17, 18 years old, are not very attractive. There's a lot of growth spurts and a lot of awkwardness.
Well, when did you become like a good-looking guy?
Probably a couple of years ago.
No. You must have. I mean, people know when they're good-looking. So there must have been a time when was it college? Where you started to feel your.
I don't know. I honestly, I think it's it's probably so wrapped up in this character that I play on TV, and I don't think there's any sort of mean value that I have that other people don't. I think if everyone else had a TV show, they'd be considered just as attractive as I am.
What do you think your high school and college friends think of your fame? This is from Peter, and you're getting on the cover of Newsweek. Are you in touch with any of them?
I am. In fact, a lot of my high school friends live in New York and work in publishing. They work in city government. They work in a lot of various and sundry parts of the city.
Right.
And they all think it's fun and crazy and weird and all that other stuff, and they're really fun to hang out with because they knew me when, so to speak, and there's no agenda.
Right. Yes.
So I think it's kind of amusing to them and interesting. So it was I remember my 30th birthday. Jen, my girlfriend, flew 3 of my closest friends who all lived in New York City down to a movie set that I was working on. Totally
great.
Surprised me.
Oh, great.
And we had a blast. And so that was my, that was everyone's introduction to like, well, this is my life. This is what happens.
That's great. My husband's like that. Whenever I have a big party for him, I always bring in his Notre Dame guys. And that means the world to him.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
They're,
it never goes away, too.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. It's you can be the most famous person on the planet, and everyone that knew you when you were 12, 13 years old, that's you're kind of frozen there. So that's pretty great.
Is your dad still alive?
No, he passed away when I was 20.
Oh, that's right. You did say that. Sorry. This is from Coop. We know you and Don Draper appeal to women. Why do you think you appeal to men so much? And that's very true.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I mean you would think that they wouldn't, because men get jealous of other men who are so appealing to women and all that. It's an interesting thing. What is it you think about Don Draper that men like?
Well, I mean, there's the old kind of saw that people say that the male movie stars, successful ones, are the ones that women want to be with and that men want to be. And I think there's a big part of the kind of lost masculinity or something that Don Draper represents, that a lot of men find attractive is the wrong word, but find compelling.
Right.
And I think that there is kind of a vicarious thrill of going back in time and living through this time, that our show actually tries to show in a relatively unnostalgic light. We try to show it warts and all, but I think that's probably what most of the men that watch the show that identify with my character really find the most compelling, is that kind of hard charge in masculinity and
ambition,
and honestly, it's like a guy who's very much in charge of his environment, and does not take any grief from anybody.
Right.
I think there's a lot of there's a lot of kind of old timey Western
yes.
good old American
Right.
balls that this guy seems to have, and I think that's a big thing with a lot of guys.
Yeah, that's true. This is from Tim. Forgive us for noticing. When seeing you off duty, it's hard to imagine you as Don. You seem affable, casual, and fun. In other words, the opposite of serious Don Draper. Once you put on his stiff clothes and his slicked back hair, does that help you get into him?
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very much a transformation, and I am. You've met me many times in casual circumstances, and I'm a very low key, shy person, but yeah. Once I have a job to do, and part of that is maintaining that character, and it is a character. And people are surprised when they meet me, and then I'm really nothing like that character.
Were you surprised when you got the part?
Sure.
When you read it, did you think you were reading for or coming to meet for that part? Or
well, I definitely knew that.
Yeah.
But I thought, oh, this is such a great part. I wonder what movie star they're going to give it to.
Oh, really?
That's what I thought. And thank God that AMC was a network that had no original programming and had no idea on sort of how to do anything, and they needed to be convinced, and I did my best to convince them, and Matt Weiner, who writes the show, did his best to convince them, and eventually we convinced them, and I think probably against their will, but
did you do a screen test?
I did about 7 or 8 auditions. And
on tape?
Yeah, on tape. And there were meetings and high level conversations and every other damn thing, but it was definitely a process, and a long process. And as you know, like at any step of the way, one misstep knocks you completely out of the game.
Yeah.
So it was something that you had to do sort of 7 times and 7 times perfectly, and I did. It was.
Did you know who your top competitor was?
I had no idea, and still don't. And
It wasn't George
sorry
Clooney.
to say, don't care.
This is from Tamara. Compared to other leading men, you look like an old school celeb. In other words, you look like a grown-up man. In an interview, you talked about how this made it difficult to be cast in shows. Why do you think that was the case?
I think it was probably when I first got to Hollywood was in the mid '90s, and I was 25 years old, but I did not look like I was 25 years old. In other words, I didn't look.
You look like you look now.
I didn't look like I looked. Yeah, I basically did. A few less wrinkles, but. What was happening then in 1995 was this sort of wave of shows for teenagers. And it was like Dawson's Creek and, not Everwood, but One Tree Hill, like those kinds of shows.
Yeah.
Which were insanely popular.
Right.
And I think Beverly Hills 90210 may have still been on.
So you were too old to be in the school and too young to be the dad.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And so that was frustrating.
Yeah.
Because I would get called in for these parts that were 19-year-old, high school sophomore or whatever, and I'm like, I'm not. There's no way that's happening. I didn't look like a sophomore in high school when I was a sophomore in high school, and so it was challenging, and it was frustrating, honestly, because there were I would go in for these guys' dads,
right,
and I didn't look like a dad either,
right.
So it was kind of just, I was right in the middle, and that all started to shift right around the time I turned 30,
right,
and really started kind of growing into my look, if that makes any sense,
right? No, it does.
But yeah, it was challenging. It was hard to get stuff.
When I started out, everybody was blonde, and so I could never play the girl next door. So I played a Chinese girl, I played a Hawaiian, I played a Spaniard. And it wasn't until
dark hair meant ethnic.
Yeah.
Right.
And it wasn't until I did that girl that all of a sudden I became the girl next door.
Right.
But up until that time, nobody would hire me for the girl next door.
That's crazy.
It's just amazing. This is from Maya. What is it about the combination of actors and where they were at their respective careers that you think made the cast click so well? That's a good question.
That is a good question. When we talked about this actually a little bit last night on Inside the Actors Studio, a big part of it was we were always the underdog. Mm-hmm. We were on a network that had never done original programming.
Right.
It was a spec pilot that was never by a guy who, although he did write for The Sopranos, never had a pilot produced.
Right.
Everything about this show was underdog, and so that extended itself down to the cast. I had been a lead on a show before, but I had never been the lead on a show.
What was the show you were?
It was called The Division. It was on Lifetime television.
Oh, I never saw
Cop
that.
show, procedural. Bonnie Bedelia was the star. and we were all underdogs in one way or another. You know, a lot of us had worked for, you know, a long time. John Slattery had worked on Broadway and in film and in television, and Elizabeth Moss was on The West Wing, and I had done a show, and a bunch of us had done shows here and there, but nothing had really caught fire. So we were all kind of hopefuls and motivated to make this as good as we could, and I think that also lent the cast kind of a camaraderie that there was no big star.
Right.
You know, there was no one person that you had to defer to.
Right.
And there was no diva, there was no attitude,
Right.
there was none of that. And although I was ostensibly the lead of the show, that's never been my way of behaving on a set either.
Right.
And so that attitude kind of, I think,
It always starts
trickled
there.
down
Yeah.
to everybody, and it was, you know, lead by example, and you just you go through the day and you do your work and you show up and you're prepared and you know your lines and all that other stuff, and everyone else goes, well, he does it and he's here, you know,
Right.
7 days out of the week.
Right.
I better do it on my 2 days.
Right.
I got to show up. So
Right.
I think that's a big part of it, and it really all boils down to, like, we were just all very motivated and very
Right.
excited and very.
And you're all perfectly cast. You know, it
agree.
really is the secret of everything. To have, I mean, nobody could play Pete, but that, you know, nobody could play.
Well, there's an
Pete.
example.
Yeah.
Vinny Kartheiser has been acting since he was 9 years old.
Really?
You know, he comes from Minnesota. He was doing plays at the Guthrie when he was a little kid, and he's an incredibly talented, incredibly well trained actor.
Yeah, he's great. They're all great. Perfectly cast. This is from Nikki Lonjo. What role are you dying to play? Nikki's there. Say hi, Nikki.
Hello, Nikki. I don't know if there's a role that I'm dying to play. I've gotten this question a lot, and I wish I had an answer.
Sweet Bird of Youth, you'd be great for that.
Obviously, there's so many
Yeah.
roles kind of in theater, both classic and contemporary, that would
Right.
be really fun to play. But I don't know, honestly.
Yeah.
Like the only way I can ever really say that is the one I'm excited to play is the next one.
Yeah.
And that's I've been a struggling actor for a lot longer than I've been a non-struggling actor. So it's exciting to have the opportunity to have that. So
Absolutely. This is from June. Where did Sal go? And will there be more gay characters? His storyline was one of the best on the show. Everyone misses him. Do you think he'll come back? Will he get a second chance at the agency?
Well, I mean, where did the agency go? I mean,
Yeah.
Sal worked at the old agency.
Right.
He
was a great character.
He was a great character, and Brian Batt's a wonderful actor.
Yes, he is.
Sal's not dead.
Oh,
And Midtown Manhattan is a fairly small place. So if I was a betting man, I would say we will probably run into Sal again at some point.
Oh, good.
Like you do. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of experience working in offices or in an industry other than ours, but even when people get fired, they still
show up. Yeah.
You know, at another agency, at a
Right.
business dinner, at whatever it is, you're going to run into people that
Right.
you've worked with. You're going to run into people that you've fired.
Right.
So I think that Sal's no exception. Although I don't make those decisions, I certainly don't write the show.
Right.
But I bet if I was a betting man, I'd say we probably will run into him again.
This is from RT. Of all the women Don's been with, who did Don think was the sexiest? Not you. We knew not
me.
to ask that.
No, who did Don think was the sexiest?
Yeah.
That's a very good question, and I don't know if I know the answer. It's oh God, I'm gonna plead the fifth on that one. I don't know. Sorry, RT, you stumped me.
You sure? He sure is intense, whatever woman it is. Wow.
Yeah, I
Once
think
he
it's-
fixes his look on her, we know she's.
I think
gonna
probably the one that Don thought was the sexiest was the next one. I'll leave it there.
That's a good one. This is from Bryce. Since Don and Betty, I love this question. Since Don and Betty broke up as husband and wife, what does that do to your relationship with January Jones? That's an interesting question because you get so involved when you're playing a part with someone, and then now she's like not in your conscience. You know?
Well, but still very much in the show.
Right.
And there's an example of what I was talking about
Right.
with Brian. I mean, they still have children together.
Right.
And they still have a
Did it change?
relationship. It's just
Did it
a
change
shifted
you in
one.
January at all?
I don't think so.
No.
It certainly didn't from my perspective.
Yeah.
But January remains a good friend, and we've had a very long history, obviously acting opposite one another, and that continues. It's just that's the good thing about our show is we really don't try to be on a treadmill.
Right.
We try to constantly move forward.
Right.
And so that relationship has shifted.
Yeah.
And we're exploring this different iteration of that.
And you feel the sadness of it. I mean, as a
definitely.
viewer,
I think.
do.
Listen, it didn't end well.
Right.
You know,
That's
and
right.
it ended probably as badly as it can.
Yeah, right.
And these little kids are caught in the middle. These three little kids, and that's the one thing that is obviously Don's main concern is these little kids, and yeah.
This is from Pete. You've become famous in just a few years. There must be a huge difference in your life. What do you think is the biggest perk?
The biggest perk is having way more influence in what you get to pick to do. Opportunities.
Yes.
That's the biggest perk, honestly. And you, so much of being an actor is waiting around for the phone to ring.
Right.
And so much of it is waiting around for other people to pick you. And when
Right.
you actually get the opportunity to choose what you want to do and in some way try to mold your own
Right.
career and your own life and take things that you feel will be helpful for you and beneficial for you, that's the best.
That's the best.
That's
of
the
it.
best
That's the
existence
best
right
of it.
there. Yeah.
This is from Gretchen. What woman in your life have you really admired, and why?
Well, that's easy. There are probably three, I guess. My mom, who, although my time with her was very short, was an incredibly motivated, intelligent, ambitious, creative, and strong woman.
Was she a working woman?
She was a working woman. She was a secretary, and raised me on a secretary salary in St. Louis, Missouri. Another one is my aunt, who you know, Suzanne, who shares a lot of the same qualities with my mom. And the third is Jen, who, not coincidentally, shares a lot of those qualities as well. She's wildly intelligent, incredibly creative, curious, and crazy talented.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. What's the craziest thing about fame that you didn't see coming? This is from Seema. Hi, Seema.
Hello, Seema. That's an interesting way to spell that name.
Yes.
Well, I guess the worst. I don't know if it's the worst. The trickiest part of being remotely famous now is that kind of anything that you do is considered news, whether it's newsworthy or not. So I go and walk my dog in our neighborhood in Los Angeles, for example, and there'll be a guy that just takes your picture, and you go, well, how is that news? Here he is walking his dog. What is that? Does that have some impact on the global economy or the weather or anything? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me, but in some world it sells magazines, and the real bummer of that whole thing is that you don't get to choose. You don't get to pick what that represents, and I don't subscribe to a tabloid culture. It really bums me out, but it is what it is, and here we are.
Yeah. This is from Lilia. Who was your favorite movie or TV star when you were growing up?
I was a Star Wars fan.
Ah.
So I wanted to be Han Solo. And I've gotten the chance to meet Harrison Ford actually a few times, and that was a pretty cool experience. In fact, there's a picture of me, Harrison Ford, and Janusz Kaminski on my refrigerator in L.A., and it's pretty cool.
You don't grow up, do you?
I'm telling you, if you would have asked my 8-year-old self, or told my 8-year-old self, don't worry about it, someday you're gonna have a picture with this guy on your fridge, I would have told you to go take a flying leap. So yeah, that was probably my favorite.
One of the things our community loves are tips. We really love tips.
Okay.
So Victoria wants to know, what are some tips you can give to people to maintain a healthy and long relationship like the one you and Jen have?
We obviously, every relationship takes work, and not only from one side. It takes work from both sides. And I think another way to put that is just commitment. You have to be committed to the relationship and making it work. Part of that is, especially because we all work in a very unpredictable industry. There could be times when, in fact, Jen just got in town last night, I've been doing press here for all week. Jen's been in L.A. and San Francisco, and it's we travel a lot, and we're often apart. But we have a rule that no matter what, we don't go 2 weeks without seeing each other face to face, being in the same city. And in fact, when Jen was doing Broadway, she was doing Wonderful Town on Broadway. And I was doing a television show back in Los Angeles. I would fly every 2 weeks.
That's great.
On the red eye, Friday night. I would stay Saturday day and leave Sunday afternoon and get back for Monday
That's
shooting.
Great.
And that was just what we needed to do.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
And that's part of the commitment to
Yeah.
it. You have to make it work, because it's the easiest thing in the world is to just sort of let it slide and let it slide and let it slide, and then all of a sudden you realize, like, well, what are we doing? What's the point?
What's the point? This is from Harriet. Is it ever difficult or tiring to play Don? Does his demeanor linger on you after you're filming for the day?
I've said this before, but acting is certainly not the hardest job in the world. It's not construction or
Right.
iron smelting.
Right.
But it can be mentally exhausting, and you have to maintain focus for a long time, and it can be emotionally exhausting as
Right.
well. And the way we shoot the show is sort of 13 shows back to back to back. It takes us about 5.5 months, and we don't have breaks.
Wow.
And so
no week off?
we don't have weeks off.
Oh my
no.
God.
And so it can be tiring. By the end of the season, I'm usually pretty wiped out.
Yeah.
But I don't take it home with me, or I try not to take it home with me. And again, part of that is like we have a really great crew that's stuck with us for this whole run, basically. The majority of them have, and we're all pretty good friends. So it's when the cameras aren't rolling, it lightens up significantly.
This is from Jessica. You seem so resilient, but like everyone, I'm sure you have disappointments and setbacks. So how do you pick yourself up and keep moving forward? Like, you'll get the idea that this site is a lot about, well, we're interested in celebrities. We love celebrities, and we love people who have done something interesting in their lives. But we also want to learn from other people. So,
Sure.
Like, what's a tip for having a good relationship? Well, you said right then it's commitment on both sides. You really made this huge effort to take the red eye. That says something to people about why you and Jen have made it. So these questions are kind of like, well, how did you do it so I can do it, right? So that's where they're coming from. I probably should have explained that
No, that's
sooner.
fine.
But
I understand.
yeah, so anyway, so when you have a setback or a disappointment, how do you pick yourself up and keep moving forward?
Well, it was that was essentially the first 3 years of my life in California. It was nothing but setbacks,
Right.
or not necessarily setbacks, just pure out rejection.
Right.
And that's part of being an actor, and part of what you have to just understand about the business is there's going to be a lot more no's than there's going to be yes.
Right.
And I think a big part of it is appreciating the yeses and assigning lesser value to the no's.
Right.
I mean, it's they ought to write a song about it. I have an idea, accentuate the positive.
That's
and
right. There is that song.
But it sounds trite, but it really is an effective way to deal with stuff in your life. And I think a bigger way to manage it all is that you can get so bogged down in the day-to-day rejections and setbacks and things like that. But if you extrapolate it out into a longer term, into a year or a 5-year thing or whatever, and if there's a positive trend upwards, even though you may have hiccups here and there, if the positive trend is upward, that's the best way to look at it. Right. And that's how you build a life, and that's how you build a career and things like that. You can't get bogged down in the day-to-day stuff. Every day is a new day. You have every day as an opportunity to, like, okay, let's that day's gone.
Right.
You can't change the past. It is what it is. Let's move forward.
But I read somewhere that you had decided you were going to quit at 30 if you hadn't made it, but you didn't, right?
I didn't quit.
No, but what
But
made
I had
you keep...
made it.
You had?
I had.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
You did make it 30.
I gave myself 5 years. I thought that was enough time. And again, that was a long enough, sort of big enough sample size, and a big enough, way to see, okay, where are we trending? Are we trending up or are we trending down? And I'll make my decision accordingly. I wasn't gonna decide in a month,
right,
whether or not I was cut out for Hollywood. I thought I'd give it at least a legitimate shot. And for me, 5 years was I could get my head around that. I was feeling like, okay, that's enough time to let the market decide where we are in
Right.
this.
And
in
did you
this
start
world.
to work then, or was that
I
Magna?
started to work. No, I started to work around when I was around 28. So I made it in under the wire
Right.
by a couple of years.
That's great. Kayla wants to know what inspires you.
Well, Kayla, I think I'm inspired by people. A lot of people who take the time to kind of explore life, who are curious, who are intellectually involved in this crazy life that we live. Whether it's Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg or Mike Nichols, your neighbor.
Yes.
People that take the time to kind of create and don't accept the status quo, who are exciting and interesting and intellectually involved, I guess. That's probably vague enough.
No,
right?
no, that's good. Absolutely. We know you were a teacher, and you did already tell us what you taught. But the other question that, let's see who the person's name is, Tracy wants to know, were you ever bullied as a kid?
I was not bullied as a kid, but there was bullying around. And I remember I was always sort of like the little fighter for justice.
Oh, great.
When I was a little kid, I would kind of point it out and say, that's not right. And I remember there was one particular incident that my taste for justice did not serve me very well, because there was some kid that was kind of acting out, and he had taken his belt. I'm 7 years old at this point.
Right.
Taking his belt off, so it was probably this big. And he's swinging around, and he's kind of out of control. And I was like, that's not right. You're not behaving the right way. I was very furious at his behavior. So I marched forward thinking I'm going to time it so the belt doesn't hit me in the head. But my timing was a little bit off, and it cracked me right in the center of the head, and I had to get 8 stitches.
Really?
There was a whole thing, blood everywhere. It was not good. But yeah, it's a problem, and I think it's a problem. It's a community problem. It exists when individuals let it exist, and it really just takes one person to say that's not okay. And if one person says it, then another person feels comfortable enough to say it,
Right.
and then 2 more. It builds exponentially.
Right.
And it obviously comes from the top down, and it comes from the culture. And if it's celebrated or ignored in the culture, then it's going to perpetuate itself.
Did you see it as a teacher?
When I taught, sure. I mean, I think it exists. I think it doesn't come from nowhere, but it just exists.
Right.
And it's an extension of adolescent immaturity and insecurity and all that other stuff. It's just it's what little kids do.
Right.
I mean, it's what adults do.
Right. I mean, they pick on the weaker.
Donald Trump's a bully. I
Yes.
mean, it's like there's plenty of examples of adult bullies in our life.
Right.
Rush Limbaugh's a bully. You know what I mean?
is
Like
he
there
ever?
are bullies in the world.
Right.
But and of course the only way to stop it is to stand up to it. And I remember being a teacher, if I ever saw it, I'm always been 6'2" and big enough, and I can lean on a little kid and say,
Right.
like, cut it out.
Right, yeah.
Stop doing that.
Right.
And stick them in the corner and separate them and
Right.
say, like, that's not okay. And
Right.
that's my job as an adult
Right.
in the world of children, is to say what's okay and what's not.
Right. I don't think they do it enough in schools.
I agree.
This is from Arena. Hi, John. What are your fears or your insecurities?
Fears and insecurities.
You thought this was going to be just a little walk in the park. These are women. They want to know stuff.
I fears and insecurities. I put myself up in front of a lot of eyeballs every day, and you are being judged almost every second of the day when that happens, and that can create a fairly insecure environment. And so, that's a big part of it. Is what's today going to bring, and is somebody going to take a picture of me picking my nose, or whatever. That's all that stuff. You constantly being under public scrutiny is very, very nervous making, and very weirdly paranoid. It's hard to kind of go away. But it's it's part of the deal, I guess.
Right.
So that's, I guess, my biggest kind of fear is just that weirdness.
We just have 2 more questions. This is from Felicia. Don Draper is such a womanizer, but what do you, Jon Hamm, find are the most appealing things about a woman?
Felicia, that's a very good question. I think I said it before, but intelligence and curiosity, and talent. It's like those are the things to me that are undefinable and create I don't know a character and create a personality that is incredibly attractive.
And Valerie wants to know what your thoughts are on reality TV.
Well, Valerie, I've gone on record as to what my thoughts on
What are they?
reality
I don't
TV
know.
are.
I haven't read the record. What did you say?
I like reality TV that creates something, whether it's Top Chef or Iron Chef or Project Runway or whatever.
Right,
I like the things where something gets created and you can see the process of creation and artistic inspiration and anything that I find kind of inspiring. The stuff I don't particularly like is the kind of stuff that exists as sort of car crash television, which that's not for me.
You mean following people around?
Following people around, and it just feels like I don't find it entertaining.
Yeah.
I understand that there are a lot of people that do, and
I just read that Clint Eastwood is going to do it. Did you read that?
I did too.
Why would he do that?
I don't know.
He's the most respected guy. He needs that, like what? Like another head.
I don't know.
I found that fascinating. And the last question from Robin Fletcher wants to know if you were nervous about doing a nude scene in the Bridesmaids opening scene. Well, your girlfriend was right there, so I'm sure she made sure that we didn't.
First of all, I wasn't nude. I was wearing a very
Briefs.
strategically placed thong. The short answer is yes. The longer answer is, I know Kristen Wiig very well. So does Jen, and it was as awkward as it could have been. But the good thing was knowing each other so well. It actually turned around and we started laughing because it's so dumb and awkward and goofy, and you're surrounded by 35 crew members and there's no. At a certain point, I think I've made the analogy before, but at a certain point, it's like walking in the rain. You're not going to get any more wet. You might as well just enjoy the rain. So that was kind of it. It was like, all right, here we are. Let's just do it. And the weird thing was, it was the last day of shooting.
Oh, thank God it wasn't the first. It's always the first.
No, it was the last day of shooting, so everybody just wanted to go home.
That's right.
So it was just a bunch of tired crew guys. Like, did we get it yet? No. Oh, okay.
I keep saying the last one, but here's another interesting one from Katie, and then we're going to stop. Katie, if you could be any other Mad Men character on the show, who would you be and why? That's an interesting question.
That's a good one. Yeah, I've answered this question before,
You
but
have.
I think I would be Roger Sterling. But if I could be any of them, I'd be Peggy Olson.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great arc she has.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
The whole show starts on her first day at work.
Right.
And she's gone through, it's interesting to me too because our show has been on the air, or at least in production, for 6 years, and on the air for 5, and so, when I started the show, I was 35 years old. Lizzie was 23. Kiernan was 6, and we've seen everybody's kind of grown up a little bit on this show, and it's funny because it doesn't take place in kind of sitcom world where nobody ages and it's the
That's
same
right,
thing
yeah.
over and over and over
Right.
again. It moves forward.
It really does. It's a soap opera.
And
in many ways.
people have lives that constantly shift.
It's amazing. Matt Leiner's just a genius.
He's a very very talented man.
Really brilliant. Thanks, John, so
My
much.
pleasure.
It was great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
You're so candid and nice. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you actually next Monday. Bye-bye.
Thanks.